I'll just summarize what the arrangements are for the exam. Okay, on the exam day, in the morning of October the 19th, the exam paper will be available to download, and that will be the final exam paper. At present, you're able to download the questions, and I'll just open those up now so that anyone watching this video will be able to see it. Okay. Currently, you can download this list of questions, and there are 11 questions here. On the 19th of October, you can download something which will be similar to this, except that 2 of these questions, and I don't even know which questions they are yet because I haven't decided them. I purposely have not decided because that way no one can twist my arm and, you know, I can't have some, I don't know, a bikie gang sort of appear at my front door and twist my arm and sort of say, tell me, you know. Nobody knows because I haven't set them yet. But 2 of these might be question 1 and 2, might be question 10 and 11. I don't know. 2 of those will be compulsory. And then out of the remaining 9, you'll be able to choose a 3rd question. And so in total, there'll be 3 questions to be answered. That arrangement is appropriate because we're doing it as an online take-home exam. The amount of content that needs to go into each one of those answers only needs to be as much as you can write in about half an hour. So it should give you an idea of how much to prepare. Between now and the exam day, the 19th of October, you're welcome to prepare your answers for all of 11. You don't have to, but you may. If you do, obviously you're going to have an awful lot of time, so you could write a book on probably any one of these questions, but I don't want that. I only want about as much in your answer as you could write comfortably in half an hour under exam conditions. So I do recommend that you do your revision now with that in mind. If you want to look at these questions, because they do follow through the modules fairly closely, you know, question 1, well, you can work that out yourself, but 11 questions, 11 modules. It's a bit of a coincidence, right? If you go through and prepare answers, then you're welcome to do that. As long as they're your own answers, you're welcome to copy and paste those into the exam. So the exam might be available for you at 6 a.m. in the morning on the 19th of October, and you might be an early bird, so you might get up and have your breakfast and go for a 5-kilometre run or whatever you do in the morning, and you can come home and at 6 a.m. you open up this thing and you can say, oh, okay, I know that I know those 2 questions that are compulsory. I've already prepared my answers. I'm going to copy it and paste it in, copy it and paste it in, the 2nd question. And then the 3rd one, you'll just decide which one you feel like answering, copy and paste that one from ones you prepared. That might take you 15 minutes. So it's 6:15 now. You've pasted in your 3 questions, 3 answers, upload it to Moodle. You can go off and ride your bike or go to the beach or do whatever else, well, go to work. That's one way of doing the exam. The other way of doing the exam is to maybe sleep in until your normal time to wake up. Let's say you wake up at 8 o'clock. You could open the exam paper and say, oh, okay, I've got these compulsory questions. You could start your revision then, and you could spend maybe 6 hours studying the first compulsory question, write an answer, spend another 6 hours answering the second one. It's taken you 12 hours. And then for the 3rd question, okay, it leaves you only maybe 3 hours, depending on how many hours there are. But one way or another, you could spend all day just doing it, and you could sort of hand it in at 10 p.m. So they're the 2 completely different ways of doing the exam paper. I would recommend you do your revision and your study before the day, I think you'll learn better, you'll be less anxious on the day, and you'll get a better grade. And I'd like you to do a better grade, and I'd like you not to be anxious. But some people might choose the other. Yeah. These are the exact words that are going to be in the exam paper. So the exact questions are exactly what's here. No changes at all. Just that 2 of them will be compulsory, and you can take 1 out of the other 9 papers, 9 questions. And then just upload it. As long as it's uploaded by 10 p.m. I think it's 10 p.m. is when I'm setting it. But just make sure that you get that right. Be careful, because we've got all the horrors of daylight saving happening. So I think Moodle for CQU defaults to Queensland time. So if you're in Queensland, that's fantastic. But if you're studying in Melbourne or Sydney or Perth or wherever, then you could be, operating a different time zone, and you wouldn't want to go along. Let's say you're in Perth, thinking that you're putting the answer in at 10 p.m., but in fact 10 p.m. Perth time is midnight or 1 a.m. or some crazy thing in Queensland time, right? So make sure you're on top of your time zones, because that would be very, very embarrassing if you got it in late. Okay.
Sorry, I have last question.
Oh, okay, go.
So it's about half an hour to answer each question, right?
That's the estimate I would like you to use when you're preparing your answers. I'm not saying I'm going to be, looking in through your webcam with a stopwatch over you, right? I don't know. You could use half an hour, you could use 10 minutes, you could use 2 hours. I don't know. But what I will tell you is that in general, the long waffly answers that have been written by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing very well, and it's taken them 4 hours to do it, usually those answers don't attract the good marks, because they look waffly, and as a marker, the markers are aware that the person writing it is just waffling on, right? The best way to do it is to do your preparation early. Start today, start yesterday. And aim at a good result that only fills up about as much space as you could fill up in half an hour of typing.
So it's about one and a half hour for 3 questions, right?
Yep, that's about as much as it needs to take you. And as I explained earlier, in that 1.5 hours of work, I will be getting an understanding of your ability equivalent to if you had done a 3-hour paper.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? We've got a couple of other people on the board. Okay, as I explained at the beginning, today we're simply going to be answering questions. The purpose of our session, our workshop, is not to introduce any new material. And really the purpose of this session is a little bit different to what it is in other terms, because we don't have the formal exam due to the disruptions caused as a result of coronavirus. And as a result, normally we would be doing a review of the term with a view to preparing you for the exam. Now, what we're doing is giving you the exam questions. And so it really sort of sidesteps the need to prepare you for the exam, because the exam is basically in front of you. As you go through these questions that you can download off the Moodle site. There are a couple of places where you can download them. You can download them off the front page of the Moodle site. We go to the Moodle site. Okay, here we've got the Moodle site for our unit. I imagine you see something very similar to this. This is my view as a lecturer, coordinator, but you should be seeing something fairly similar. And down here on the 21st of last month, we announced that the final take-home exam, the exam questions are available by clicking here. I understand that at least one person has had trouble downloading those, and so I've uploaded them again, where you can download them from this link. And so if you haven't done it already, I would recommend very, very strongly that you download the exam questions, because they will make your exam preparation and your review of the unit very, very easy. And so download the questions. When you download those questions, you'll come up with this page, and it's simply the questions for the Term 2 Standard Examination 2020 in business finance. Okay, I do recommend that you prepare for these questions between now and the exam day, if you haven't started already. And you should notice there are 11 modules in the unit, plus today's review, and there are also 11 questions. And so you can see that the questions roughly follow module by module. If you look at any of the questions, we'll just take one at random. Question 8, what is the cost of capital? How is it evaluated? What does that sound like? Weighted average cost of capital, all that stuff we did with capital structure and so on. That's your opportunity to tell me everything you know about the cost of capital and how it's evaluated, which is exactly what we did through that that module. Okay. What other considerations need to be considered in its adoption? Again, that takes you into more of the theory side of that, so you can tell me all about the various strategy things and so on. How much are we going to write in that question? Well, if it was a conventional formal exam where you would go along to an exam room the way you would have done last year, you would sit down and do 6 of these questions in 3 hours. I'm only looking for the same level of answer. And so 6 questions in 3 hours means that in a formal exam, you'd be doing about half an hour a question. Here, I'd like you to apply the same amount of work, if you like, to each one of the answers. I would like the answers for each one of these to be about as much work as you could do in about 30 minutes of writing. Because it's a take-home exam, you don't have to do that writing necessarily on the day. If you prepare question 8 today, and it turns out that question 8 is one of the questions you choose to do on the 19th when the formal exam is opened, then you can simply copy and paste your answer that you've prepared today for the exam that you sit in 2 weeks' time. I'm not going to be concerned about that. The only thing I'm going to be concerned about is if you copy and paste in somebody else's answer to question 8, or if you include in your answer to question 8 some text which comes from some other source, a textbook, an article, whatever, plagiarism. Don't want that. I don't want you to be using other people's work in any way, shape, or form. And so whether you prepare your answers now and in the next 2 weeks, or whether you prepare them on the day itself, as long as they're genuinely your answers, they only need to be about as much work as you can achieve in about half an hour. That'll be the equivalent of what you would have been able to achieve if it was a normal formal exam. It needs to be your work, and you can upload it. So that's the way you approach the exam. And you can look at each one of the other questions. Debt is a complex contributor to capital structure. Outline the influence of debt in the financial objectives of the firm and the propositions of these M&M characters, Nigliani and Miller. We spent a whole module doing that, didn't we? That's your opportunity to tell me about what you learned when we dealt with the M&M propositions 1 and 2 and all the other stuff to do with debt. And the rest of the questions are the same. I think you'll find that the questions are meant to aid your review of the unit and also to give you the opportunity to show me how much interest you took in each unit. And so that should be satisfying for you guys because you get to learn all this interesting stuff, this important stuff, and you also get to show me, and that's kind of good for all concerned. Okay, any questions? Any questions on any of the questions? Okay.
Actually, I have a question, if that's okay.
Say again?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, just a bit of feedback or sort of echoing in the room that you're in. So just speak a bit quieter and probably slower, and it'll be a bit easier to hear at this end.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Very good. Yep, that's fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay, lovely. I just have a few things about question 6. I don't understand like the worth of capital assets. Like, is that like capital asset valuation or? Because I'm trying to. Oh, sorry.
No, good. No, fair question. Be very hard to do this question if you didn't understand what a capital asset was.
Yeah.
Fantastic question then. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All assets are things which an individual or a company owns for the purpose of making a profit. That's a definition from accounting.
Mm.
Assets are then classified between the kind of assets that come and go. For instance, if you're running a shop, you might have the shelves in the shop, which are capital, and they're there, for years. But then you have the stock on the shelves, cans of soup or Fruit Loops or cornflakes or something, and they're coming and going all the time, aren't they? No? Yeah. And so what we say is there's sort of a difference between the asset of the shelf, which stays there unchanged for years and years, and the asset of the stock, which is coming and going all the time. We use the expression inventory now instead of stock, largely because of the Americans. But anyway, that's just what we do. Right? So we've got these two types. We call the inventory, the boxes of cornflakes and the cans of soup, we call that working capital or working assets, current assets, right? We call the shelves, and it could be the factory or the machine or the land, we call that a capital asset because it's like this stable thing which we own for, long term and tends not to wear out in use, all right? Now, capital assets include the shelves, the factory, licenses, jumbo jets, although now we tend to talk more in terms of A360s and stuff. What else is capital assets? Shares in companies. They're things which don't wear out and don't get changed regularly, but we own them with the intention of making a profit. And so a capital asset is this usually a big ticket item that we buy with the intention of holding it for a couple of years and it's going to make us money. That's what a capital asset is. In finance, we tend to see these capital assets, whether it's an A360 or a share in BHP, as something that we only own because of the money it can make us. Right? So, and this is one of the really weird things about taking the finance perspective. And I personally found that quite a education, because I was working in engineering in the development industry, where I was nose to nose with making things. I was turning paddocks into suburbs. And that was very exciting work. But I noticed that the people that were making a lot more money than I was in the engineering side, the people were making a lot more money were the developers and stuff. And I thought, well, I'm sick of getting around in gumboots and a hard hat, so I'll become a developer and make a lot more money and not have to worry about stuff. The land is a capital asset because it's owned with the intention of making money. I don't own it because I love looking at it. You know, you might own a house because you just fall in love with the way the kitchen's set up. Or you might own a painting because you just want to sit and stare at it, right? That's one reason to own things. But a capital asset, you only own it because of the money it can make you. And so your perspective starts to stop looking at the dirt, if it's land, or the beauty of it if it's a painting, and start looking at it in terms of how many dollars it can make for you month by month, right? You can even get people, for instance, who will buy a painting and they really couldn't give a hoot about the beauty of the thing. All they know is if they put that painting in their art exhibition or their art gallery or something, they're going to be able to charge more money for people coming through their door. Do those people love their artworks because they're artworks, or do they love them because they make money? No? The people that own art in order to make money see the works of art as capital assets. The people who own the painting because they just want to sit and stare at it all day and derive great pleasure from it, good on them, are art lovers. And that's one of the curiosities. I can look at a piece of wilderness. Two of my sons and I were thinking of buying a property about 3 hours drive out of where I live. And we would be buying it just for the sheer delight of being able to walk around it and shoot wild things on it and all sorts of stuff like that. Another person might look at exactly the same piece of property and they'd be thinking in terms of how they could develop it, or maybe how they could build a tourist facility on it and make money out of it, right? In all these cases, in one view, your perspective is it's a capital asset. I don't really care about it as dirt. I don't really care about it as art. I don't really care about it as a jumbo jet. I only care about it in terms of the cash it can make me, the cash flow it can produce. Right? In question 6, we're taking that perspective. What can this make for me? And at that perspective, I'm not interested in the thing as a thing itself. I'm simply looking at it in terms of the cash it's going to cost me to get it and the cash it's going to make me by having it. And that's where we look at the financial performance measures. So at no point am I really interested in owning my block of land because it's beautiful and because of the wild creatures that are able to on it and the beautiful vegetation on it or what have you. No, I'm not interested at all. I'm looking at it as a capital asset. And as a capital asset, the only value it has for me is the fact that I'm able to get a rent from it, from some sort of income. Now, in this particular case, the performance measures I'd be looking at as things like yield, so the return on equity, return on investment, the rent divided by the value of the property if it's real estate, all of those yield measures, that's the simple one. I think we also talked about years purchase and years purchase payback period we looked at. We looked at net present value and we looked at internal rate of return. So there's some of the major ones. We broke those up into the discounted and non-discounted forms of financial performance measures. And you see, the thing about it is that when you take the the capital asset perspective, when I see my jumbo jet or my beautiful block of land in the country as a capital asset, I'm simply interpreting it in terms of a set of cash flows. And so when you see the word capital asset, you think of something which I'm going to understand in terms of a set of cash flows. And in fact, that's the only value I have. That's the only perspective. So is that the capital asset thing? And one of the really curious things is that even a jumbo jet that you'd normally think of as costing, I don't know what a jumbo jet costs, like $500 million. I'm only guessing. Right? When I pay the $500 million to buy myself a jumbo jet, the curious thing about it is that I'm not paying for it in terms of what it is, you know, the engineering, the expensive metals, the complex technology, the elegance of its aerodynamics. Not paying for any of that. I'm paying simply in terms of the series of cash flows that I expect it to give me in the future. Okay, you'll find this in the textbook, not so much the theory stuff that I just kind of waffled on about just then, but the really interesting part of that question is explain their respective strengths and weaknesses. And you'll find that we've sort of covered that. It's also covered very nicely in the textbook, and you'd find it in the recording. So if that's last part of that question is your opportunity to put the icing on the cake and to not just say what they are, but why they're useful, why they're not useful, how to overcome their weaknesses if they do have weaknesses, that sort of stuff. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Everyone's gone quiet. Okay. The fear of...
Sorry,
yeah.
Back here. I came in a little later, so I'm hoping you haven't talked about it yet, but so there's no specific structure to the answers themselves, correct? And the referencing, you were happy to just for us to put it in there, correct?
Yep. A structure, I like to use the word succinct because it's easier for you to write something succinct and it's easier for me to read it. The structure, if you find putting diagrams and whatever in your question, then by all means do that. But if
You're not worried if it's essay form or report form with bullet points or anything like that?
No. But just do whatever works succinctly. I don't want 50 pages of waffle. I prefer 2 pages of crisp answer. And if you want to use bullet points, if you want to use diagrams, if you know, whatever you want to use, I would like you to cite all your all your sources. You know, I want your work to be your work. You don't have to give the same kind of precision in referencing style that you would if it was an essay, because it's notionally exam conditions. But I would like you to, you know, fess up and say, you know, quoting from such and such, or, you know, the Australian Bureau of Statistics says, or, you know, when somebody or other in the Reserve Bank of Australia was commenting on the Australian economy, they said such and such. You know, just some sort of a reference, just so that I know where it comes from. Sure. It actually has an advantage because it shows me that you're interested enough to have read that other stuff, and that's really, really useful. Mm-hmm. for your education, also for me giving you marks. And it also avoids getting into trouble with stuff like the plagiarism and academic integrity kind of issues, right? But I'm not asking you to do like a full, citation in the way you would with an essay, because I understand that it's an exam conditions, right?
Yep. No worries. So no, we won't have to worry about a reference list either, then, I'm assuming.
No, if you find yourself with enough time and inclination or what have you, by all means. I like to use the Endnote program. I recommend it for all my students. The reason is that it enables me to put in my citations and build my reference list as fast as, just really fast. Endnote's a terrific thing. When I started using it when I was an undergraduate, so it's going to be a few years ago now. And my Endnote library has simply grown since then. Actually, it's not strictly, it was the second time I was an undergraduate. I did one degree and then came back and did another one a few years later. And the second degree, I was doing philosophy and sociology and psych and all that sort of interesting stuff. And for those studies, using Endnote was absolutely invaluable. But my Endnote library has simply grown since then. So now I think it's up to about 2,000 items in it or something, which represents basically everything I've read in the last 25 or 30 years. And I can cite any of those anytime I want. And so using Endnote is I would recommend it as an investment in your future. And it does mean that when you're using Endnote, it's unbelievably easy to put your citations. I'll give you a little demonstration. Okay, here's the Word version of the exam paper, right? Now, I'm just putting that up as an example of a text document, right? I'll open up my Endnote library. And okay, here's my Endnote library. It's got all sorts of things in it. You don't need to be too concerned about all of those sort of stuff. What I'm going to do, I'm going to search here on, let's do one of these. I'm going to search on capital. I'll do that as keyword or any field. Search. Now, out of the things that I've read over the last, let's say, 30 years, here are all the things that have got the word capital in them, all sorts of stuff. I want to include a citation to that item in my answer. Here we go. Question 9, I might be writing some text here. I now insert a citation. Just thinking, okay, I've got the author date, correct APA style. Right. That wasn't very painful, was it? And down the end, I've got my reference list being built. If I want to add another one from, let's say, David Parker, my good mate, and I want to add that somewhere else, do the same thing, Endnote, insert select a citation. And now Parker is in my reference list as well. See how fast it is?
Yeah.
You can buy that, you can get that free from the library. And notionally, it's yours for as long as you're a student at CQU. I don't see why anyone would ever chase you if you used Endnote for the rest of your life from the copy that you got from CQU. I don't know. But, these things are very convenient little bits of software. If you want to use that, then, if you're doing citations using Endnote, it doesn't take you any time to do a absolutely ridgy-dig formal citation, and you can build up, the whole thing. But most, if you don't have Endnote, then obviously you're not going to be using it. So in something like that, if we go back to where am I doing, sort of mucking about here. If I had this, if I simply said answer and I simply said, Vale says, and then whatever, that'd be sufficient in the exam as well. So formal citation's one thing, but simply Vale said, I'd be happy with that.
No worries.
Just don't say I said, right? And I know you won't, but that's the only distinction.
Sorry, just one more question. With regards to the word limit, you said pretty much anything that within that 30-minute. Yeah, so that could potentially be up to, gathering on what you've said so far, up to a couple of pages per, question.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm not
keeping
saying
in mind you want us to be succinct.
That's right. And one of the things I do tell people from time to time, when I used to use this style of exam all the time from my stages, simply because I found that everyone liked it. The students loved it, and markers found it very effective, and the result was that people learnt better. So it was very, very popular. Using this system, the best answer I ever came across to a question was one that was a little bit less than half a page, but it earned a 10 out of 10. And the reason was that in that half a page, this student, I can't even remember what the question was now, but I can remember just reading it thinking, wow. And, basically every line was saying something really powerful. And I think there were a couple of bullet points in there as well. And at the end of it, I thought, crikey, can't do better than that, 10, So it's not as though you have to write 2 pages to get your answer across. It might take you 2, might take you 2.5, might take you 1.5, might take you 1 page. The important thing is this, answering the question crisply and convincingly. And also, you see, some people are doing this unit because they've got to. It's on the list, don't really like finance. All this mathematics stuff is just kind of, driving them absolutely batty, right? They've got really no passion for it. Well, yeah, okay, I understand that. I've had to study subjects I haven't had a lot of passion for either, right? And I want those people to pass and maybe get credits and stuff, but they won't have the passion to do a distinction or a high distinction because it's just, it's not their stuff, right? Other people will say, hey, this is really fabulous and interesting. And in their spare time, they'll be talking to their friends and they'll be sort of reading the Fin Review and they'll be looking on websites and, checking up what the Reserve Bank is sort of talking about and, what, I don't know, Oliver's Insights from AMP is saying about where the economy is going and this, that, and the other, right? And you get to live and breathe it and get excited about it. That's fantastic. Now, when those people come along to do their exam, in their half hour, they're not simply going to be bogging along saying, oh, well, I've got to answer this about cost of capital, whatever it is. They'll be there saying, hey, this is really fantastic. And, Grant Oliver or whatever his name is from Oliver's Insights said such and such about, where such and such is going. And, that just kind of bristles over the enthusiasm. Now, as a marker, I find that just exciting because I love seeing students that are excited. And from the point of view of the person who's doing the answer, it's a lot more pleasant to be in that sort of situation. And so they're the ones, and you sort of tend to see 2 things. You tend to see an interest in extra reading, because if you've got a passion for something, you're going to read more over it or more on it than simply in the textbook. And the other thing is that you'll see usually that they've really got their head around the issue. And sometimes you don't need to spend 5 pages to tell somebody that you're excited about something, you understand it really, really well. Sometimes you can write it in just a couple of really insightful sentences. And you kind of see that. I think that's the most exciting way to study, by the way. If you're going to be studying, you may as well do stuff that really, gets your blood going, It's good fun. So there you go. that make sense? Have I answered your question, or have I just rabbled on?
No, thank you very much, Dr. Small.
Oh, yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So do we need to put a reference list after the questions?
This sort of comes in from the previous question. What I'm saying is I would like you to at least do that. You know, Vale said, all right, in the exam. That tells me that it's not I said, it's, you know, you're recognizing that you're taking something from somebody else's ideas. If you're writing an essay, you would actually put it with a formal citation, you know, Vale 2014, all right? Because it's an exam, you don't have to put in the formal author date citation with the reference list at the end, but you do have to do the Vale said. Having said that, the people that put in the formal Vale 2014, they'll be recognised as doing a slightly better job than the Vale said people. Does that make sense?
Yes, so I don't have to put a reference list at the end, right?
No, you don't have to. If you do, good on you, and I'll be pleased to see it. If you don't do it, you won't be, you know, considered to have failed or have done something wrong. Okay.
If we don't do like referencing or like Will said, that there would be any penalties or like that?
If you don't do a reference list,
or using this as you said, Will said, then would there be any penalties or like something?
I'd prefer you to think of it in terms of bonuses rather than penalties. There will not be any penalties.
Okay.
Right. However, if you're able, in the space of the time that you give yourself for your answers, to do it very, you know, completely and well laid out and all that stuff, that will earn a bonus, but you certainly won't be penalised if it's not there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I would like to ask, like, if one answer is for 20 marks, so like up to 1,000 words would be the limit for the one answer?
Now, I've just been explaining that I would like you to think in terms of how much writing you can do in about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Right? If you can write 1,000 words in 30 minutes, write 1,000 words. If you can only write 500 words in 30 minutes, write 500. But whether it's 1,000 or 500, what I'm looking for is how well you answer the question. Now, to give you an idea of what I'm looking for in terms of that, you know, how well you're answering the question, for a pass, I would expect that you have a general understanding of the general answer to the question without significant errors. You might have minor errors, but not significant ones. So if it's a general broad brush idea, get you a pass. To get a credit, you'll be having that general answer, but with more depth and more precision. So you'll be going into more detail, you'll be showing that you've got a greater mastery, and you'll have almost no errors. You still might have one or two, but very negligible mistakes. Okay. To get
okay.
Yep.
According to you, we should like there would be only 3 questions, so we should spend half an hour for just a single answer.
That's right.
So that after that, at end we have 1.5 hours left to proofread our answers.
Yep. That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now, think in terms of this being a more efficient way to run an exam. It's not an easier way to run an exam. All right? And the reason for that is that if we were to run a regular exam where you went into an exam room, sat down with supervisors looking over your shoulder and silence for 3 hours, we would be getting you to do 6 questions. Each of those questions would be worth 10 marks. You'd have 3 hours to do it. And so that means you'd be spending about 30 minutes per question for 3 hours. Here, we're giving you a smaller number of questions, but they are a sample. And because they're a sample, I expect that if, let's imagine, okay, I'm not saying I'm going to choose question 9. I'm not saying I'm not going to choose question 9. I'm simply, let's imagine I did. And so one of the compulsory questions was question 9, right? When I answer that, no, when I read your answer for question 9, when I'm reading it, I'm thinking, oh, this is a fantastic answer. If this is the kind of student who can answer question 9 at this level, let's imagine you earn a distinction for it, and fantastic, good on you. I'll be able to say, well, if he knows question 9 at a distinction level, and he's had, weeks and weeks to prepare, I would expect that he's probably prepared his answer for question 8 to the same standard. And so if he was worth a distinction for question 9, if I'd asked him question 8 instead, he probably would have given me a distinction answer as well. And if I asked him question 10, likewise, you'd probably given me a distinction answer. Okay? Now, some students might just find that they really love question 9 and they've read lots of stuff and they've watched videos and YouTubes and, bought half a dozen textbooks and stuff on question 9. They know nothing at all about question 10. Well, yeah, okay. There's a remote chance that you might end up ending up with a distinction in your exam paper. But if I'd made question 10 the compulsory one, you might have failed. There's a possibility. But assuming you guys prepare yourselves well, and there's no reason why you can't, because you've got, at least a couple of weeks now between now and the exam, and you've got the exam questions all in front of you, I expect you'll probably master each one of these questions to about the same degree of mastery. And that's why I'm comfortable to only ask you a smaller number of questions.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it gives you the opportunity to now focus your review. You see, right now, between now and the 19th of October, you can really focus. When you're looking at capital structure, you can be reviewing all of that chapter on capital structure with the view to giving a really nice answer on the capital structure question in the paper. And when we do something else, the performance measures, you can read all of the stuff that we studied on, financial performance with a view to answering this question, right? And you go through, give yourself the opportunity to, master each one of those questions. And mate, whether I ask you 2 questions or all 11 of them, I'm probably not going to get a better idea or a worse idea of your ability. I want you all to master all 11 of those questions, by the way. That's what I'd love you to come away with, because then you'll be able to, be happier, when somebody else asks you something to do with finance. I want you guys to be really, really good at finance. And this type of exam paper has been proven to be a great way to achieve it in a way which is enjoyable for you guys without any stress. You don't have to, imagine, right now you can just kind of go off and do this over the next couple of weeks. When you open the exam paper on the 19th of October, you're going to get sort of cold sweat and stuff, wondering what's going to be on the exam paper. You shouldn't. You've already seen it. You just don't know which one's going to be compulsory or not. So it's zero stress exam paper. Okay. How are we going? Any other questions?
Sorry, I haven't.
Hey, Please.
Yeah, because like this is the finance exam, and do we just need to put some concept to answer a question, or I need to have my own analysis in the questions?
Your own analysis. Do you mean mathematical analysis or your own evaluation of whether the theories are good or bad?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer this question. I mean, I just put some concept, or I also need to evaluate it.
Well, to a certain extent, you'll see in some of the questions. Let's the strengths and weaknesses one. Okay, here's. See, explain their strengths and weaknesses. To a certain extent, that invites you to evaluate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Now you'll see some of the answers of that in the textbook and in the video that we did when we did the workshop. But there's also an opportunity for you to say how you see the strengths and weaknesses as well. Right. And I think a number of the questions have that kind of a dimension. Okay, just at random, question 4 here. In your answer, you may examine the impact of risk and uncertainty in determining a result. Okay, that's really an evaluation question. Okay, now notice the word may here. It doesn't say that you have to, but you're invited to. There are a number of places where I expect that the students who aren't really enjoying the unit but simply want to pass for a credit will look at that and they say, oh, yeah, I may examine the exam, but I don't have to. Let's go off and do something else. Right? Whereas the person who's got a bit of passion for it and has really been tossing around this idea of financial value and maybe talk to their friends and who knows what about it, they'll think, oh, fantastic. In this question, I'm allowed to give my evaluation of the impact of risk and uncertainty in determining the result. Fantastic. Yeah? And so that student will really take that opportunity. It's up to you guys. You can, to a certain extent, you see, you guys can decide the mark you want. If you want a high distinction, then you prepare an answer which shows that you do have that passion, that better understanding, and that sort of wider engagement in the topic. And I hope you do. On the other hand, if you've got a lot of things happening in your life and you're not really interested in the unit, you simply want to pass it so that you can get on to something else, then you answer the question the way you want. You want to pass, you want a credit, you want a distinction. It's up to you.
But I see some questions is just need to put the concept.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a lot of them are very much a matter of just laying out what's in the textbook.
So if I just put all the some answers, I just put the textbook, is that okay?
Yep. I will say though, as well as simply listing out the concepts, tying it together so that it reads well is important. Not necessary, but it's important. And so you can get a pass or a credit by simply listing out, the facts. If you tie them together in a way which is very persuasive, so it sort of draws the reader in, shows your enthusiasm, shows that you're really a master at the topic and keen to lead other people through it, obviously that will be rewarded with a better grade. Okay?
Okay. So maybe some of the answer I just put all the citation and I don't have the evaluation is also acceptable, right?
Yeah, well, you see, this is the range of abilities. A good thing to look at for you guys, this is not just for business finance, but for any of your studies, is to see if you can find a copy. It will be on the CQ website somewhere of the, now what do they call it? Marking and assessment guidelines, I think they call it. So it's a public document. It's not some secret thing that, you know, the lecturers kind of hide amongst themselves, but it's the standard that the university uses for our assessment marking. That's a public document. And in that document, if I'm thinking about the right one, just let me see if I can find it while we're talking. Just bear with me for a little moment. This might take me a minute or two to find it. It's a little while since I've found it. Probably won't be able to find it now, unfortunately. Assessment meeting grades list. Oh, mate. No, I'm not going to be able to find it, unfortunately. There's a document. I know I've got it on my computer somewhere. I just can't put my finger on it quickly. But it lays out what the university expects for each level of grade. And it goes from pass to credit to distinction and so on. It's, oh dear. Yeah, and I'm just not able to find it at the moment. And it's now become very, very frustrating, because it would be good for you to see it. If you can find it, I'll put it up on the unit once I find it. So that might be a little bit later. But it's kind of useful because it gives you a bit of an idea of what you're shooting for in terms of what the university sees as constituting a pass at these different levels. Okay. Oh, here's the version that operates in the Bachelor of Property course. This is taken from the universities, university criteria, but it's been adapted for the Bachelor of Property course. It's very, very similar to the other course. So if you're doing a Bachelor of Accounting or a Bachelor of Business or what have you, very, very similar. Okay. What's it saying? To get a pass, demonstrates learning outcomes for the course, such as knowledge and fundamental concepts, performance of basic skills. Okay, basic. Demonstrates sufficient quality of performance to be considered satisfactory or adequate or competent or capable in relation to the learning outcomes of the course. And so if this is in accounting or property or financial advice, it means that you're adequate or competent to practice accounting or property valuation or whatever it is. Doesn't mean you're an expert, not top of the tree, but you've overcome, you've mastered the basic skills. That's got to pass, right? Move on to a credit. And you can use and apply your fundamental concepts and skills going beyond mere replication. So you've got something going on there. You know, you've got a bit more of an idea. Awareness of relevance, some use of analytical skills, some originality or insight. That's a credit. So if you get a credit in one of your units, that's what the university is saying you're up to. We move to a distinction. The university criteria demonstrates awareness or understanding of deeper and less obvious aspects of the course. When they use the word course here, by the way, they really mean unit. There was a terminology change a few years back, and this document, I just picked out, it comes from 2017, when what we call a unit was being called a course. Right? But to get a distinction, you should have an idea of the less obvious and the deeper issues. I think it should mention somewhere here a broader understanding. But you see, your ability to solve non-routine problems, that's the difference between a distinction level student and a pass level student. Pass level student, you know, I'll say work out this future value and they'll be able to work it out more or less most of the time. A distinction level student, they will be able to tell me all about what future value means and you know, continuous compounding and all those other little bells and whistles that aren't so obvious. When you get to a high D, demonstrates imagination, originality or flair, a level of work which is interesting or surprisingly exciting, well read. You've got no idea as a marker. You know, when you read someone who's genuinely at a high D level, it's an absolute delight because it's surprising, exciting. You can say, hey, this person is switched on. I would like to get this person to help teach my course. You know, that's a high D. And well read means that you read outside of what's in the unit, okay? And at a high distinction, outstanding and faultless level of presentation, polished structure. So this is what I'm saying. You're not marked down because you don't do a complete citation in the exam, but you will get bonus marks if you do, because that's the sort of stuff that somebody who's really on top of their game will be able to do effortlessly because they put in the extra work. Maybe they've gone to the trouble of, you know, installing Endnote and developing an Endnote library, things like that. And a style which shows an excellent understanding of knowledge. This is what the university just expects for a high D. Now, this is the sort of stuff which I think every student ought to look at and think, oh, do I want to do that? You know, what are you here for? Do you want to do it because you want to come away with somebody who's known for their originality and their insight and their evidence of extended application? You know, the fact that you can come up and, you know, have a bit of a yarn to me over a beer at the end of term and say, hey, you know, Dr. Small, have you noticed what, you know, the Westpac Bank is sort of doing in response to COVID? It's really interesting. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. That's your high D student, and they're absolutely marvelous. You see, it's very satisfying for yourselves. You imagine what it's like as a high D student going along to get a job, because you know that you're worth employing before you even go to the interview. Whereas if you've just got a 55% or something, okay, you've passed business finance, you know, go along to a job interview. Oh, yes, sir, maybe, sir. Oh, I don't really know, sir. You know, you come out, you don't really know whether you're, you know, going anywhere with it. Whereas if this is the level of your study, you know, the world opens up for you. I recommend it. It's exciting. It's fun. Okay. Any other questions? Scared everyone else by talking about high Ds now. Okay. Well, with that, I guess we've really covered a fair range of things. We've talked about how the exam's going to operate, what kind of efforts are going to be required, and also the variety of ways you can approach the exam. And as I say, there are really two polar extremes. Either you can do your preparation now and prepare your answers now and go in and just copy and paste your own work into your exam. Maybe on the 19th, the exam might only take you 15 minutes or 20 minutes to actually do from go to woe. Or you can do the other extreme where you go out and do all the beer and skittles today and go to the bar with your mates between now and the 19th, and on the morning of the 19th, you open up the exam paper and you say, oh, well, these are the two questions I have to know, and I'll spend the rest of the day sweating and studying and writing up stuff to answer those three questions. They're the two extremes. I do recommend that you do the work beforehand. It will be a lot more enjoyable for you, and you'll be a lot closer to this end of the scale as well. I would like my students to come in with lots of high Ds. And if that scares you off, then you can just come back to a nice distinction. That's pretty achievable for anyone in the class, I think. If you're smart enough to be at university, you're smart enough to do a distinction. If you've got the time and the interest to do it. So there you go. It's up to you how you solve it. With that, I think we might finish up, give you guys a little bit of an early mark. And I wish you all the best with your preparation for your exam.
Well, sorry, could I ask you another question?
Sure.
Yeah, maybe in half an hour, I just can write about 300 or 400 words with less mark than the 1,000 word or 2,000 words.
Well, 2,000 words of waffle might end up with less marks than 300 words of succinct answer. Okay.
So 300 work is also accessible if I can organize it well wide.
Yeah, as long as it's a smart 300 words. Now, I'm not saying 300 words is the answer, by the way, but I'm not saying 2,000 is either. What I'm saying is that I want an answer which shows me that you understand what's going on. Right? And if you can do that in 300, you can do it in 500, you can do it in 800. That's all fine. If you do it in 3,000, but it's just waffle, you'll certainly pass. But no, I mean, as long as the waffle is vaguely kind of on target, but you may not do it as well with your 3,000 words of waffle as you would with, 800 words of succinct, insightful understanding.
Are we gonna get a Word document, or we have to do it directly on the Moodle?
Yep. On the morning of the 19th, I think it is, the Monday, it's like a couple of weeks' time,
Yes.
the Moodle site will make available the Word document. The Word document will look a little bit like this fella. Now, it'll have the text of these 11 questions, except 2 of them, and I don't know which 2 they're going to be yet, but 2 of them will be at the very front, like the top of the page, and they will be compulsory. And then that'll be probably like part A. And then part B is that you can choose one of the remaining 9 questions.
Okay.
Right. And I'll set it up so that you basically write your answer into that that space, right? So if you want to answer question 9, for instance, it'll be set up so you just basically start typing below the question. So you don't have to write a separate question or whatever. Well, you don't have to write anything more. You just basically start typing.
Okay. Firstly, we have to download the file. We have to then type our answers, and after that, before 12 o'clock, we have to upload our file again.
Exactly. Yep. And so the file you'll upload, the only thing that I'll recommend that you do, you don't actually have to do this, but it'd be really handy if you did, is rename the file that you upload. The file that you download will be simply called something like this, 2020 Think 9011, right? But you'll write it then as probably start with your surname. So it'll be singular H, business finance 2020 final exam. That will be the just rename it as your own file name, upload it again, and that's what you got to do.
Okay.
Great.
I've got a quick question, if that's okay. It's only going to be quick.
Sure.
I know you were talking before about like the high distinctions and stuff, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to try my best, but is there a needed pass mark? Like, do we have to get a certain mark? Because I just want to make sure at least I can hit that mark, like, do we have to get it like a 25 out of 60 or a 30 out of 60, or is it just like the 50 overall points together?
Yeah, add your 3 assignments or 3 assessments together. You've got, and as long as the result comes to a number that looks like 50 or bigger, you've passed. Okay,
because I just wanted to make sure, like, I'm not going to just, try and aim for 50, but I just wanted to just double check.
That's up to you. I mean, at this moment in time, you might be sitting on, 30 or 40 marks and you only need another 10 to pass.
Oh, don't.
Well, whatever. I mean, some people might be in that position. And I've had cases where people hardly turn up to the final exam because they don't need the marks. They're smart people and they love their beer. Not a decision I'd make, by the way, but you know, it happens.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. How are we going? Good questions, by the way. Thank you. Any other last ones? We'll just do one more and we'll finish up. Maybe we won't do one more. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed the unit, everyone. I think it's one of the units in the School of Building that everyone should get their head around. I guess I've had a bit of a fondness for finance for a long time, even though I'm an economist. I think everyone in our world needs to know a bit of law, a bit of finance, a bit of economics, in order to survive and make sense of the world. And so even if you don't see yourself as going off to becoming, you know, the financial controller for IBM Australia, I hope you find that what you've learned in the unit makes a little bit more sense of your world. So I think that's probably the important part for some people. If you do find yourself going off into more work in the finance and investment area, financial advice or property, then you know, this will be the foundation for a lot more study, which, you know, now's a good time to probably decide whether you want to go ahead with it or not. Some people will say, yes, this is fantastic, I'm hungry for more. Other people are saying, oh my goodness, business finance, I'm never going to do that stuff again. I'm happy, you know. One of my daughters trained as a nurse, and she discovered at one stage that she wasn't able to make as much money as she'd like as a nurse. And so she went off and followed my footsteps into property. And she became qualified as a property economist. And she was working as a property economist and doing very well. But after a year or so, she went back to nursing. And I remember asking her, and she was a little bit coy about it because, you know, she basically gave away the old man's profession. She says, yes, Dad, well, I can understand that you love it, but I really want to look after people, so I prefer to be in a hospital. Might only make half as much money, but that's what makes me happy. And so she's happy as a nurse, and I'm happy for her. And that might be your story as well. So whether you follow the finance world into riches and fame and become another George Soros or something, it's up to you. If you prefer to take what you might consider to be a more honest job, like my daughter with her nursing, then you know, that's good for you too. But knowing finance is really important because our world does revolve on finance very, very much. And if you want to understand what's behind our world, I think a finance understanding is very, very useful, even for things like making sense of the COVID-19 situation we've got at present. But I'll leave that for you guys, and I hope you all do well in the exam. As I say, I would far prefer all of my students to be at this end of the queue, but I also understand that that's not for everybody. But I hope when you do see the dust settling, you find that at least we've given you a track to run on and the opportunity to do your best at this stuff. So all the best with the exam. And I've enjoyed running these sessions, and especially for those people who have contributed regularly in the workshops, it's been really fantastic having the feedback. So thank you very much for making it far more enjoyable for me on my side as well. Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Dr. Small.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Most welcome. Bye-bye.